All right. Welcome to the Refugee Welcome Collective Lunch and Learn series. In these sessions, we aim to bring interesting and timely information to you, supporters of refugees. Whether you are a volunteer, community sponsor, resettlement agency staff, a local advocate, or just someone who is interested in learning more, we hope that you enjoy today's session, Supporting Refugee Families with School-Age Learners, Tips for Volunteers and Sponsors. Refugee Welcome Collective collaborates with partners to provide in-depth training programs, weekly learning sessions, resources, and on-demand technical assistance for sponsors. Practitioners at resettlement agencies, refugees paired with sponsors, community and institutional partners, and others to support quality community sponsorship programs across the United States. Let's see, next slide. As a reminder for everyone joining the Lunch and Learn today, there is a control panel in the upper right-hand corner of your screen that will allow you to submit questions through the questions box. There will be ample time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers. Everyone on today's webinar is automatically muted. However, if you have any tech issues, please raise your hand through the control panel or submit a question in the questions box and we will assist you. Additionally, the presentation and a recording and any resources referenced will be sent to everyone following today's webinar. This brings us to our presenter today. Our presenter is Christian Hultgren. Christian is at the New Arrivals Institute in Greensboro, North Carolina. The New Arrivals Institute's vision is a community that welcomes refugees and immigrants and provides them with the tools to achieve their goals. And it fulfills this mission by providing educational opportunities from English language training to citizenship preparedness to early childhood classes. At the New Arrivals Institute, Christian is the Refugee School Impact Director, including overseeing the Afghan School Impact Program. And he is with us today, even though, like many of you who are connected to school-age children, he's had a few busy weeks with school starting. He's with us today to help us as sponsors or volunteers understand how we can support refugee families with school-age learners. Christian, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Okay, yeah, so I'm the Refugee School Impact Coordinator. I've been doing this for 6+ years. Before that, I was a 4th grade teacher, been a professional photographer, worked for Lutheran Family Services in Greensboro as the ESL coordinator. I've taught English as a second language for the community college. And so I've kind of been doing this since 1996, off and on, and have come back again full circle here, working with refugee families here at the New Arrivals Institute. So I'm working with kids and families, parents, in schools. So I kind of act as liaison between the schools and between the families, probably much like some of you are doing, where there's an issue or a problem and the family will come to you and then you'll go to the school, or the school comes to you and then you go to the family to try and work that out. So we really kind of do that kind of cooperative work. And I'll just say first off is that one of the things that I'm really fortunate about is having built relationships with the schools and with the families. The first thing I try and do is to gain trust with the families because they're providing information to me to share with the school. So I don't want to break that trust. And then also with the school, they have their own privacy concerns. And so they want to protect the privacy of their students. And so I have to work with that as well. So I want to also make sure that I don't close the door on that school. And I keep my relationship with them open so that I can access the school and then access the family as well. Okay, so that's a little bit there. Okay, so next slide. Let's see here. Okay, so some resources and things. So I find that my best resources in the public schools are my ESL teachers. And you can look those up by going onto your school's website and looking through and seeing the ESL teachers. The classroom teachers are good too when you're working with them. I work with social workers as well. They're really good because they're seeing a lot of our ESL students. And the data managers sort of thing. Data managers, because I'm always looking for trying to get bus information or other issues with required documents, immunizations, and whatnot. So the ESL teachers, great resource. And then in the school system, And then for families in general, I think that the library is a really excellent resource. One of the things I found is that it's hard for families to get out of the house for several reasons. Number one, they feel comfortable and secure in there. Number two, they may not be familiar or be hesitant to ride public transportation, even though that's their primary mode of transportation. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll take, I'll use my phone, and I do a lot of showing. So, and I say showing, not telling. And I think that we tend to inundate people with words, and it's hard to pick out what words and what phrases are exactly pertinent for that. So I usually carry a notebook, and I'll write and I'll draw pictures so that I can kind of take that main idea that I'm trying to communicate and kind of have that visually for the parent to see, or the child or family. So going to the library, local library or
And actually,
downtown library.
Can I ask you, Christian, whenever you are representing that visually, what usually ends up on that piece of paper, like the route number, or not to put you on the spot, but
I'm gonna drive you. Yeah. Okay. So it's pictures, right? So so I'll this will be the bus, this will be the home, and then or the the library. So I'll draw this out, and I'll put the bus, and then I'll draw like your home, and then the library, and then I may work with them going to like Google Maps, and we may put in the address for the library and their home and get directions. I'll shoot that, and then or I print out ahead of time so that we kind of have a visual map of where the bus is going to go, the times. I just find that security is really nice because I have ahead of time written all the information, and then we'll go together to the library one time, to make sure they know the bus stop and things. And then at the library, any library, and it doesn't matter if you take your client there or your family, or you could go yourself and check books out. Each library has should have an ESL section. And in the ESL section, they're going to have ESL books. So the same books they're going to use at community college. They're going to have a wide variety of beginning and intermediate books to check out and make copies with. So I always do that. And also Barnes & Noble is a good one to check that ESL section out. I found that really resourceful and really helpful. And then let's see. So community college ESL classes, that's what we have here. I would say that for adults. A lot of the times the parents go to work and they may not be able to go to classes as easily. There are online classes that start about 6 or 6:30. You can check at your community college. They should be free. There'll be a basic skills class. And that way your families could like log in and check that out from home. Or they could have the option to go after work to, to their local community college. So I kind of always encourage, families to be lifelong learners, and the other thing is a struggle is that everybody wants everything right away, and language acquisition is very slow, methodical. And so, I try and encourage people, little by little, step by step, and, just kind of encourage them to stick with it. It's not an overnight thing. That's a really hard thing. But over time, changes really are made. And the one thing I do emphasize, and this isn't just with language, it's anything. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning, and that's the hardest part. And for me, learning a second language, and a lot of Americans in school, is we learn it from books in a classroom, and we don't have a chance to use it as much as we would like to, or the opportunity is just not there. But encouraging families, parents, and children to try, and creating a safe place too, to make mistakes and to say, I think it's great that that's wrong, because now we'll find out what's right. And that comes back to like just creating a nice open environment. And I don't correct right away. Is I'll let them kind of go, because I don't want to break up that conversation with that flow. And then maybe I'll have my own notebook and I'll write down a couple of things. And then after we get the main idea expressed, then I may go back and help them with the English part. And everything is a lesson. Like that's one thing as a former teacher, I always love is just everything is a lesson, like new vocabulary, That's why I also always like write or draw things, just so I can draw a picture, write the vocabulary, and then show it to them, and then we can spell it, write it, and kind of go from there. And also, I have up there Engvid. I love the Engvid website for adults, for kids. It's a really great resource to use. What I like about it is you can go in and you can choose your favorite teacher. Some of them have Australian accents or British accents or American accents. Men, women, you can find your different teacher. There are different levels, basic, intermediate, and advanced. And you can also look for a specific category or specific skill set that you're going to do, like idioms or something. Or so you can, and then you can search. And so once you find a teacher that you like, then you can look at other lessons that they have. The great thing is that they're short, 20, 25 minutes, recorded video lessons by real ESL teachers with a whiteboard. And then the students and the parents could sit there and take notes, watch it again a second time, you know, to get anything they may have missed. And it's just a plethora of little mini lessons that are out there for basic, beginners, and advanced. I don't know that they have necessarily phonics and those really low literacy skills, but it's just such a great resource. I encourage everybody to check that out, share it with your family. And let's see, next, Oxford Picture Dictionary. I use that all the time. It's my go-to for vocabulary. It's my go-to for taking those. So for those of you who don't know, it's a picture dictionary. There are pictures, and then there are, you know, the words underneath it. They have the monolingual, and they also have several that are in different languages. You can get Arabic, you can get French, a couple different ones. I tend to use the monolingual, unless it's for a specific family, which is fine. And it's just got everything that you could look at. So it's a really great place for people just to build vocabulary. It's something that you can find something for everybody, find out what they're interested in, and then just build from that. So it's a really great resource for families just to see and to practice, you know, all these different words related to different topics. Side by Side by Malinsky and Bliss is a classic, ESL classic that I've used for 20, 30 years teaching ESL. And there's book 1, there's book 2, 3, and 4. It's good because it gives us a set series of grammar, like starts with present tense, you know, present continuous, simple past, all of those pieces, and then it gives you little things to practice with. It could be for somebody independently if they've been to school before and could figure it out, but it's a really good one to sit next to somebody for a tutoring event to just practice some basic English language, some basic grammar, kind of a thing. I love that book. Targimly is a new find of about last year or two. The Targimly app is free. There's a paid version, but in that one you can look for languages. We pulled that one into use when we had our Afghans arrive, and that was a really good resource for Pashto, where you can basically you go in and you request a language interpreter, and then they'll get in touch with you, and so you get an actual live person that will kind of be there to help you out. It's a good one. Let's see. Next slide.
A little plug there too, Christian. Actually, we're gonna do a lunch and learn in like the coming month, where somebody from Targimly is gonna show us how to like download the app and everything. So yeah, glad you like it too.
It's a great one. Yeah, and a lot of our co-sponsors that are working with our families use that as well too. So it's one that's making the rounds, and it's a really nice asset to have. Google Translate works as well too. You know, but I do a lot of drawing pictures, you know, and just making that connection. I like that a lot. I think that just trying, when I'm trying and they're trying, you know, we're both kind of learning, and that's a really nice place for people to be together, kind of a thing. Okay, let's see, next slide. Okay, PowerShift. This is something I see a lot, especially with families, and it's a number of different things. So speaking of families that arrive, you're going to have children and adults, and the children may know more English or may learn English faster than their parents. What I find is this power shift that happens where the children know more English than the adults, and then therefore the children are doing a lot more. The children may be paying bills. The children will be interpreting, the children will be making appointments, medical appointments. So it's a lot that's asked of these young children, even the young children are 18 and whatnot, is that now they're going from, just being a kid to kind of helping their parents navigate this new land and this new language and, a whole lot of appointments and red tape and whatnot. And so the other thing that comes with that, though, is that the kids then have a little more power than the parents, and they can use that power to how they wish. And when I say that, I've had several incidents where students will tell the parents that the school didn't call them, the school didn't send a letter home, and so that way the parents don't know if it's true or not, or if there is no school today. How do the parents are supposed to know this information? So they have to rely on their kids, they have to trust their kids, and the kids being kids may at times abuse that trust, or it may be a lot of responsibility put on younger children. I know young children of 8 years old that are, dealing with really complex issues, including like food stamps and SNAP benefits. But they are the most competent, most English proficient in the family. And that's really hard. And then that also pulls that power shift to where the parents kind of feel, disempowered, and, they're the ones who have been taking care of everything and done this. And now they kind of feel helpless. So that can create some conflict at home. And the kids are like, I don't want to do this. I help you all the time. They just want to be kids. So that can be a real challenge if you can know that to try and, I don't have any real advice on that except to just be aware of it.
You mentioned some real advice the other day. Do you, about the when you were talking about the school calendars. I don't know. You said something about making sure that the parents have the school calendar.
Right. Yeah. So that in Greensboro, North Carolina, we are lucky enough to have 2 school calendars this year and last. We have an early start. So we had students that had older kids that were in one school. Families had younger kids at a different school with different calendars. And so, one child would say, hey, we don't have school tomorrow. And then the other one would say, I don't have school either, when they actually did. And the parents, who are they supposed to believe, And so that's one thing I did was I go on quite often to our Guilford County school website, and you can find the updated school calendar there and print it out, or take a screenshot, send it to the family. And then I explain the key on the work days, days off, first day of school, the last day of school. And that's a good one, because otherwise, I put myself in my family's shoes, is they may not know that there's a day off or there's a holiday, and then they're waiting at the bus stop for an hour and the bus hasn't come, and so those little pieces, whenever you can empower a family like that, it's really great, because then they can know ahead of time. They're not calling you or relying on you, and you're not telling them every day, although I do. We send out mass text messages to our different families in different languages. Hey, there's no school tomorrow. Or the fun thing is, thinking of things as, with the weather changing as we get into winter and things like that, delay, 2-hour delay. That's my next piece, is to try and help families learn to find out how to know if their school's been delayed. And I'll do some pictures of the TV with that ticker tape coming down to show them that. I'll have them Google the school website, and then it'll be displayed there. So that's something that I'm going to kind of working with my parents on, and that goes into teaching them how to do it. And the hardest thing is, it's so easy to do it for someone. It's so easy just to say, I'll take care of that for you, but that doesn't necessarily help them long term. Sorry, but I'll come to you. So in that sense, if I had more time, I would do it more often. But sitting there with your family and looking these things up, showing them how to do it, again, it's like show, don't tell. But if you sit there, go to the website for the school, and then have them try and type it in. Those are good things to practice when that time comes. And I'll take screenshots of the actual school, like saying it's the closing. So I'll go onto the school's website and it'll say Guilford County schools are closed today. I'll screenshot that to families and then, do a markup so they can see what I'm seeing, and just try and, do that frequently so that they can kind of get in the habit of doing that for themselves. Let's see, computer literacy. The good thing is that most families are pretty good with their phones. They're doing everything from paying rent on their phones and things. But then again, you still have your families or adults that are illiterate in their own language. And here are not only navigating a new language, new country, all these things, but also have to, figure out how to do these things. So the kids, again, will probably be more proficient at these different items. And the other thing is the kids will probably talk their parents into buying a nice TV or a nice phone or a phone for them. And so that's something that I try and talk about with parents too. Is kids don't need everything. They want that, but they don't necessarily need that. So it's want versus need. And I'll get into that a little bit with our I think our next slide. We'll see the next one. Let's see. Boundaries, here it is. Okay. Yeah, this is, so the first time I went to visit a family made a home visit. It was a family from the Congo, and I sat down and we made my introduction, talked to them, enrolled them in my program, and asked if they needed anything. So sure enough, the family needed a new TV. And I said, oh, I would love to have a new TV too. So, I listen. I try not to say yes to things that I can't do, because again, that's that trust issue, that if I'm going to do something, then I'm going to try and follow through and make sure that I do it. And so I'm not going to overpromise, because that just sets up everybody up for failure. So I have to really watch what I say, try and do. I'll look into it, I'll do my best, but not guaranteeing that I'll do something, because then that locks me into I have to do it or I've broken my word kind of a thing. So I try not to corner myself into something. And so that goes into like helping, fixing, or serving. And this is a piece that's it's by Rachel, Naomi, Renan, and we'll email this piece to you. I use this with all my tutors. It's a really good article that talks about helping, fixing, or serving. And a lot of this comes down to, and I'll give you just the gist of it, and you'll read it yourself later. But so when you fix something, you see life is broken. And then when you help, you see life is weak. And when you serve, you see life as whole. Fixing and helping be the work of the ego, and service the work of the soul. Let's see. So some of this comes down to the difference between helping and fixing is you're not always going to be there. And so when you come in and you fix something, you got to take over. I'm going to do this. It's great. It gets it done, but it only gets done when you do it. So the idea is that you're going to be there, but you're not always going to be there forever. So you're going to have to look at your family becoming self-sufficient. And that's our end goal. And with a lot of co-sponsors and working with families, is that initial 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, is where the bulk of that help and assistance is going to go. And then, you're slowly going to taper off over time to where the family's going to be doing more and more independently. So with boundaries is you're trying not to box yourself in, you're trying not to get overwhelmed, you're trying to do, you want to help, you want to assist family, but you have to also understand that you're not always going to be there. And sometimes helping or assisting a family isn't really helping them. I just spoke to somebody this weekend, a sponsor developer, who had a sponsor group that had been doing the family's laundry for 6 months. So they were actually going to the family, picking up the laundry, taking it home, washing it, folding it, and bringing it back all laundered and they were burning out. And of course, you're going to get burned out if you're doing a whole family's laundry on top of your own. And part of the thing was that, they, well, there's, you need to find some kind of a balance, because if you burn out, you're not going to be there to help them in the long run, or not, you're going to burn out and not help another family or something like that. So boundaries are hard because we want to help, we want to do everything that we can. And we like to feel needed. It feels good to help, but it can be really overwhelming. I know for myself, I have to, turn off my phone. I make boundaries where I don't pick up the phone after a certain time. I actually didn't pick up my phone for most of the weekend, although I did. And that goes back to something with boundaries along the lines of, when a family contacts you, if you start responding right away, then they're going to think that you're going to respond right away from now on. So, if it's not an emergency, then maybe you hold off and give them some time, because eventually you're not, again, always going to be there. And that's really hard. It's hard on both ends, because we like to build relationships and we like working with people. And that's why we're working with refugees, and the refugees like us, because we're the American ambassadors, the U.S. ambassadors, of our city and town and community, and we want to welcome them. And we kind of fumble through it, and we make it work. And again, mistakes are going to be made, but the idea is that we're both making them. We're all making the mistakes together, and we're okay. But the end goal is that self-sufficiency. And that's kind of imagining yourself not being there. What do you do? And then if you're not there, who's going to do it? So eventually, if you're not there, then that family's going to have to do it. And so setting them up to be successful is you slowly walking back, kind of a thing. And it's really hard, because who doesn't want to help when somebody, has a need or something like that. Okay, next slide.
I like that example though that you gave about the laundry. It's like, sometimes by not solving the problem right away, you're like actually serving more, right? Because then they'll learn where the laundromat, is.
Well, and that goes, that same family, the co-sponsored group, they wanted to get that family a washer and a dryer. The family said, "We don't need one. You do it for us." So it's kind of like they were already on that boat of like, hey, we don't need a washer and a dryer, because our laundry gets done.
Right. And you never know. Maybe they'd make maybe they'd make some good friends at the laundromat that would then, be all these other connections for them or what have you.
It's pretty amazing. The one thing, this brings up a point about laundry that kind of like, I always kind of keep an eye out. If you ever make a home visit, or you're visiting your family in the home, there are a couple things that I'd like to just point out. Number one, I always go to the bathroom to check, because I want to make sure that there's no mold issue. I want to see if they're washing their clothes in their bathtub, and if they're hanging the wet clothes there, because a lot of my kids, I'll get calls from social workers at school, and they've got mildew, their clothes are mildewy, because they're washing their clothes at home and then drying them, or putting, the damp clothes out. Mold and mildew problems in some of these apartments can be an issue. So I kind of look for that. Another thing to be aware of, I don't mean to scare anybody, but as you're going to make home visits and things like that, you do run the risk of bed bugs, kind of a thing. That is something, you're going in, you don't think about it. You're sitting on a sofa, a bug could hop on and come back to your house too. I believe I have had bed bugs. I got them quickly. I think that's probably from a home visit. Let's see. If you do make a home visit, you're gonna get greeted like a king or a queen. I will go to homes and they will hand me a full glass of Mountain Dew, and other things like that. So, people love a home visit, but also think of it as an opportunity to have an extra set of eyes on things, the stove and little things like that. Okay, so
I also want to
get back to
mention that. Do you mind if
yeah.
I interrupt real quick? Just also thinking of,
No, no,
like
no.
referencing back to boundaries too, that I feel like home visits are a good time to do that. But also like remember, I also try to encourage volunteers and sponsors to remember that like it's just this interesting, or it's this twist of circumstances that you like have this relationship with this family or individual that's different than, even though the time period is relatively small. So don't also feel like you need to like go through a family's house like looking for mildew or what have you. But you know what I mean? Like if you were
Yep,
in the
yep,
like not to like
yep.
invite yourself. Even though I think sometimes it's tricky because sometimes sponsors and volunteers have helped set up the home. And so you've like been in the home maybe before the family has, but remembering that like once they come there, it's like their home. So you have to like follow normal protocol. But it is, like you said, a good opportunity to like, if when there, you know what I mean? Like if you do see these things, you can offer to help them out, or you can Google some information and help them if they do have bed bugs. I'm sure they'd appreciate some information on how to get rid of them. It's tricky. But yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly.
We're going to talk about dropout prevention.
No, you're right. Yeah, well, the other thing that brings up too is that, making home visits or whatnot is that you're handed a stack of mail, then bills, and, it's hard to distinguish bills from just, junk mail and stuff. So I usually look through the mail pretty quickly to distinguish this is nothing, and then if it is something important, I'll explain maybe what it is, but I'll also refer them back to their caseworker, kind of a thing, because I'm not gonna handle their bills for them, and I help with school. I don't help with bills, but I will refer them to the right person, kind of a thing. Because that's another hard thing, is that once you start working with bills, is that they're going to come back to you again and again to rely on you for that. So that's a good thing to work with, your caseworker or something, to make sure that, and with boundaries, again, that you're not getting in over your head, and that also that you're working with the family and the caseworker so that family becomes independent. It's hard. I couldn't imagine, going to another country and trying this with a different alphabet. And with a family nonetheless. I mean, it's amazing, it really is. And so with dropout prevention, here we go. So with my teenagers, this is a tough one sometimes, and it comes from a couple of different pieces. A lot of the times I'll have students that have a learning gap. So they may be 16 years old, but they may have only had 3 years of school. That's a huge one, because now they're going into ninth grade at 16, having only had 3 years of school, and they're expected to do ninth grade work, whether it's math, reading, and this and that. So, and plus if you're 16 and in ninth grade, that can be a tough one. Or if you're 18 in ninth grade, that can be a really tough one, because you're an older student and you're going to school with a lot of younger kids. So that, puts a lot of pressure there, and makes you feel, can kind of give you that not a lot of encouragement. It can kind of be disappointing and discouraging. So that's a big one for my older kids. That's really hard. The other thing is they want to get a job and they want to make money, and they don't think that they need school. And they're looking at the immediate gratification now, or these short-term answers. And so they'll think they'll want to drop out of school because they can get a job and make some money, buy a car, and all this. So what I try and do is I explain, it's like, first of all, you're young, it's like, I know this is what you want, but, being a parent kind of thing, it's, if you have a high school degree, then you could, if you are working, let's say that you work for a company for quite a while, and there's an opportunity for a promotion, but that promotion requires a high school degree. So therefore, you can only advance to a certain level. And that could hold you back from, being a supervisor or from making more money, and whatnot. That's one piece. The other aspect is that with a high school degree, you are, you can Google this, you're going to make $100,000+ more in your lifetime than you would if you did not have a high school degree. So that sometimes will work. I'll try and find what my student is interested in and what will help them stay in school. The other thing I say is, 8 hours of of English a day in public school is great. I also try and encourage my kids to go to school, because if they're, let's say they're 18 and they're in ninth grade, well, like they really haven't had a chance to be a kid sometimes too. They haven't had the opportunity to go to school and just to do that. So I kind of want my older kids to have that opportunity to learn English for 8 hours a day, interact with other kids, interact with peers, to make some friends and sort of things before they have to go to work and maybe work in a chicken plant or something like that. That's a really tough one for those older kids, especially with that learning gap. I find that to be really hard. And then the other piece to that is the older kids that need lower level material, and to not make it baby-like, to find that English material, same thing for, literacy with adults, where you're giving them information and resources that are at their level, English level, but not kid versions, that are more adult. So that's a big challenge too. The other thing I try and do is, I talk about parents making a sacrifice to come here for their kids to do better, and this is one way, is to go to school and to graduate. A lot of times kids will want to do the GED, and we have not had anybody successfully in 6 years that I've been here, probably longer than that, 10 years, they have not had anybody pass the GED who is not a native speaker of English. And the challenge here with the community colleges, there are GED classes, but you have to test at a certain level of English, in math and in English and in writing, in order to be able to take those GED classes. Then you will study the GED, but it's based upon those test results, which is a test in reading, writing, and math, and more, American history and whatnot. And that is extremely difficult. So if you just stay in school and get that degree, you're more likely to get that degree faster than you would by getting the GED. The other thing is, once you stop going to school, it's so hard to come back. That's the other thing I try and prevent. Like, if anybody drops out, they're really not going to go back. And that's something that's really hard. That's where you reach out to your social worker at your school, your ESL teacher at the school, and get some support. Let them know what's happening if somebody is talking about dropping out, because they'll do a great job of finding an interpreter, hopefully, talking to the family, talking to the parents, and talking to that child, and keeping them in school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there another slide? I don't.
Yeah, well, we can open it up to questions also.
Yeah,
and yeah, like to some extent too, I like all of those points that you made, and it's like you're bringing the information to them in, like in high school, and they may still decide to drop out for whatever reason.
Exactly.
But at least they kind of like know, like you said, like, oh, down the road, you might have the opportunity to be a supervisor, or, you might actually make more money over your lifetime. And I like those points that you made. It's like, oh, they're gonna, they're the best person to make the decision, but at least you're giving them, the information that they needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're gonna open it up to questions now. And as a reminder, you can submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. So go ahead and pass along any questions you have for Christian or for others. Let me see. And I guess, I have some questions. You mentioned a few different, like good relationships with ESL teachers and printing out the calendars. And you also mentioned how like you're not always going to be there. And to tell you the truth, Christian, not every like student will have a Christian, right? They won't all have like a New Arrivals Institute in their community or what have you. And so one question I have is, what are some of those opportunities to connect the parent directly to the school through parent-teacher conferences, or I don't know, do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, I think, you're finding out the classroom teacher. I still, even today, I had families that didn't know what school their child was going to. That's the other thing I try and do is I print out the information on the school, the address of the school. I print out the student's home address and then the school's address on Google Maps, and then I print it out and I show them how to get there. You know, if the bus isn't there or a parent wants to make a school visit, that they know how to get there. Yeah, so you know, the classroom teacher's name, you can email them. They're really good. Once they find that they have someone they can connect with, they're really happy to get that extra support. So classroom teacher, ESL teacher, they're going to see them most likely every day or several times a week. And the ESL teachers are going to be the ones who are really going to make those more of those parent connections, I feel, than the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher will try, but they may not have the language or be as familiar working with non-native English speakers as your ESL teacher will. ESL teacher will also have those resources of your school district. So your school system probably has interpreters. So the ESL teacher could help facilitate getting you finding an interpreter within the school system. The other thing I do is requesting a parent-teacher meeting. One of the things that I really try and do is that even though our families don't speak English, that doesn't mean that they're quiet. That doesn't mean they're not involved in their kids' education. And so that's where I try and be the advocate, the voice of those parents, to where I just amplify it. And so when I'm contacting a teacher or school, you know, I'll always say, you know, this student, the parents asked me to do this. So it's not necessarily me doing it, but it's letting them know that I'm communicating with the family. The family wants to communicate with the school, and I'm the facilitator. But really, it's the family, you know, that's that kind of main person again. Because that's the other thing. Schools kind of assume that when parents don't show up at open house, or, you know, they're not responding to text messages or to the emails, or they're not logged on to Class Dojo, that they're not interested and not paying attention, and they don't care about their child's education. And that simply isn't the fact. So, you know, I do that reaching out, and then I always pull that parent in. And a lot of times, you know, that parent-teacher conference is great, because then the family can figure out how their child's doing. And this goes back to the whole, you know, kids, when they come home from school, they have their book bag, you know, and if I'm there, I open the book bag and I look at it with the parent, and we pull it out, and usually the younger kids will have a folder, you know, that has 2 pockets, and inside there'll be information that stays home, like artwork and things like that, or work they did in school. Another pocket may have things to return to school. Maybe it's a permission slip form, or, you know, this and that. So if I'm with a parent, I'll show them, I'll go through the school book bag with them and pull out all the extra book fair stuff that may not be pertinent, and other things, and kind of help them in that sense. You know?
Yeah, no, and actually there's a comment in here. Thanks for talking about empowering the family to take on activities on their own, and just, you know, agreeing that many times because the children are more English proficient, they end up being placed in that tough role that can, you know, produce misinterpretation or what have you. Yeah, and that parent empowerment can also look like normalizing and encouraging parents to ask for a professional interpreter when needed. Yeah. Another really easy thing to do that I used to do when I was a tutor is, like, anytime you can also just have the phrase of, like, oh, I don't know, ask your mom, or, like, I don't know, ask your dad, you know, is helpful. Like, there will be times that come up, you know, where a kid will ask you about, you know, permission to go somewhere, or like some information that you just know, oh, their mom knows that. Like, why are they asking me? And just redirecting it, you know, to, like, oh yeah, ask your mom or ask your dad. Let me see. Oh, one point of clarification. You mentioned whenever you were talking about, like, kids staying in school because then they can learn English 8 hours a day. There was just a point of clarification, like, do you have alternative graduation requirements, or, like, are they able to learn English 8 hours a day, or?
So yeah, the public schools, so well, when I say 8 hours a day, I'm thinking, you know, like a full school day. So here at New Arrivals Institute, we have community college classes that are taught by community college instructors. They're non-credit classes, basic English, basic skills classes, and they're 3 hours a day. So if parents were to go, or kids dropped out at 16, whatever, and wanted to go to community college, that would only be 3 hours of English a day. So if you went to the morning class and then you went to an evening class, you might get 6 hours or 5 hours, you know, in there. So when I say 8 hour day, it's like you're looking at a school day from 7:30, 8 o'clock until 2:30, 3:30 sort of thing, and that's a great opportunity to get English, all day long sort of a thing.
Yeah, and we've just got 1 or 2 minutes left here, but so if anybody else has any questions, I liked how you talked about how difficult it can be to learn a language, and I think sometimes for sponsors or volunteers, that's a really good thing to remember, that the normal time frame for learning conversational English is like a year at best when you're under the best circumstances, like 5 years for
Right.
kind of like academic English or what have you. And I think some volunteers or sponsors think like, oh, it's the end of 3 months and they're not, speaking English yet. I failed as a volunteer. But just realizing that like, oh, those pictures that you draw whenever you take them on the bus, might be a lot more helpful, because in that probably less than a year that you're kind of supporting them, they're not going to learn, like it's not up to you to make sure that they have conversational English, within that year. So I appreciated you mentioning
yeah, and those pictures are really good too. The bus is, well, a lot of the times I'll encourage people to write down where they're going, library, with an address, and they can show the bus driver, if they, so that way the bus driver can help them like, find the right way, rather than speaking. Yeah, it is a real challenge. I had an ESL instructor years ago who actually took up learning an instrument as a way to learn, like to think about second language acquisition. So them learning to play the violin put them in a position to where the challenges and struggles, they already spoke several different languages, of learning a language, put them in that kind of position that their students would be in, or that the English language learners would be in, so they could empathize better.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. Yeah, and you had mentioned too something about just letting people make mistakes, and I think to some extent like that attitude and kind of like the fun that you create around that will actually stick with people maybe longer than like some vocabulary word that you help them with or what have you.
When I was learning, when learning German, I was in high school, and I didn't want to speak because it wasn't going to be perfect. But if I had spoken a lot more, it's when I went to Germany and was thrust into it, where I did have to speak every single day, that all of a sudden, I was using it all the time versus not using it and thinking about using it, and so it just, practice makes perfect. And creating that environment to where it's okay to make mistakes, that's a really nice, relaxed environment for everybody.
Yeah. Let's see.
And
actually,
it's a great learning environment.
Yeah, no, it is. And let's see, the last question I can actually answer, it's somebody just asked about getting on the email list to be alerted for upcoming webinars. And if you go to our website on refugeewelcome.org, you can sign up for our email list and then find out about, like we mentioned, the Terjungli one coming up, etc. But I think that's all of our questions for today. And Christian, once again, despite the fact that this is beginning of the school year, thank you so much for sharing some of your expertise today. And thank you for everyone.
No problem.
Yes. And thank you everyone for attending today's Lunch and Learn. As we mentioned, you'll receive an email with a link to today's recording and also some of the resources that Christian mentioned. And on behalf of Refugee Welcome Collective, thank you for joining us and have a good rest of your day. Thanks again, Christian.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.